Well, hello and welcome to another recording of the Content Marketing Studio. We are back for another expert Q&A about all things digital marketing and brand building. Today, to help me answer the question how to run a successful hybrid event, I've got not just one, but two special guests, Ben Harding, Director at Fresh Productions, and Gavin Newman, CEO at iEvent. Ben and Gavin, welcome to the Content Marketing Studio.
Thank you for having us. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, good to be here.
Now, I have to tell you, just preparing for today, looking at the website, LinkedIn profile, it feels to me, it looks to me like you've got one of the best jobs in the world. It's a combination of event management, video production, networking, and creating and designing experience. So for our viewers and listeners, please understand, Ben and Gavin are specialists in designing and delivering experiences that can be both online and offline, and sometimes put together. It's also called a hybrid. Gavin, I want to start with you because we're going to go with age before youth, if you don't mind.
That's fine.
For our viewers, watching. So, just your track record in event management, and how did you get started with iEvent?
I started out in events back in the early 90s when I accidentally invested in a nightclub in Mayfair, and it was semi-accidental. And I just got into events. We were doing events off-site as well, lots of corporate stuff. It wasn't just people coming for a night out, and I just loved it, actually, the whole thing. Fast forward to about 12 years ago, I was on a mutual person's friend's Facebook thread. He said, "What are you up to?" And I said, "I've just started this business called iEvent Management, which was in person. It was team building, training and development, and a few corporate bits and pieces." He said, "With a name like that, surely you must be in virtual events." And I said, "I've never heard of them." He said, "Come over." And I remember driving over to see him, and they gave me a little 20-minute presentation with some very basic virtual stuff going on in America. And it was like a 45-minute drive. And I don't remember driving home. That's the whole point. I got home and I went, my head was just exploding with ideas. And I incorporated iEvent exactly 12 years ago this week, and the rest, as I say, is history.
Wow, well, happy anniversary. So just to be clear for the audience, and we're going to be covering a lot in more details, iEvent now is literally the platform as well as the amazing team, which you call the iEventians, if I'm not mistaken.
The iEventians, yeah. We've built this massive leviathan of a platform that delivers events all over the world. We've got some great clients over in Australia, many universities over in the States, throughout Europe, APAC. So it's been a really amazing journey to go through that. So we've got a team of about sort of 30 people now, all in-house, yeah.
Thank you very much. Now, Ben, on your LinkedIn profile, because I'm the kind of guy that will check a LinkedIn profile, you've got virtual events, live streaming, and hybrid events, which we'll come back to. But question about Fresh Productions, have you always done the virtual / live / hybrid, or did you have, again, a beginning with the offline world?
Yeah, so we actually started our business by renting out inflatable marquees. And that quickly became news to me that was not the route I wanted to take. And my background was in audio visual and the more technical production side of things. So that's when we really took the plunge into delivering conferences, different business events. But with our esports clients that we had, we were able to learn a lot about the live streaming side, and esports, as you may be aware, has been quite ahead of the curve with all of the live streaming and I guess hybrid in a way, that they would have an audience in a venue, in a stadium, but they're also streaming to millions of viewers on Twitch. So that's when we were looking at the option of actually, should we start putting this into business events and capturing that content for repurposing it on marketing purposes and things like that. But the kind of the reform of our business was at the start of COVID. We knew that hybrid was going to be the future. There was always going to be a place for live. There was always going to be a place for virtual, and the amalgamation of those two is where we came up with the virtual, hybrid, and live.
Can I ask you then, Ben, and then we'll ask Gavin if he agrees with you. Do you have now a definition or a description of what is meant by a hybrid event?
Yeah, there's lots of ways to look at this. I mean, hybrid essentially is including both audiences. So you've got your in-person audience, however many that may be, but you also have your online audience and wherever they may be across the world. So I guess with the hybrid and what kind of is a hybrid event is just including both of those.
Gavin, anything you want to add to that?
I think that that there is a sort of, in some ways, there is a misconception. Hybrids means different things to different people, and there's still no real clear definition. I mean, Ben's absolutely right. You know, you've essentially got a live audience and a virtual audience, and we've, over the last 12 years, we've looked at different ways of hybrid that, in fact, most people think it's delivered simultaneously, but it doesn't have to be. Some of the most successful events that we still call hybrid, because there is in-person element and there's a live, is something we call the echo, and that is where the live event is delivered, the content is captured there, and then about 2 weeks later, once you've finessed it and added some nice graphics, etc., to that content and chopped it up nicely, is then to deliver that event 2 weeks later as an echo of the live event. And that's massively popular because it's a lot more cost effective. Live streaming is where the money is. Capturing video and repurposing it for and that's one of them. And the other one is actually to look at an in-person event and to wrap the virtual solution around it, which is also hybrid. It's still a hybrid delivery, as you have the pre-event stuff all done online. So it's building the excitement, the registration, maybe a bit of pre-event exclusive content with one of the speakers, and then to deliver the live event, and then actually to go back into the virtual one afterwards. So, it's not so much a misconception. I just think there are many more facets to hybrid out there, which could be really appealing to people, but they think it should be done simultaneously. So, we do all of those sorts of different options.
Yeah, for me, the discussion I'm having with customers, which I want to explore again, thank you for your time today, is this idea of, it's not just, forgive me, and I'm going to use like the worst, kind of scenario, someone at the back of the room holding a phone and kind of, trying to capture the image and the sound via Facebook Live. That's not a hybrid event, because my concerns in terms of my line of work is I don't want the online audience to be given the lesser experience and alternative to those who have traveled to the venue. If anything, there should be parity, right?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Ben and I were discussing it this week. Is we got a blog on our website, and it's about hybrid events, and I think it was a statistic like 71% of event producers say their greatest challenge is connecting the in-person and virtual audience. So that's one of the first challenges. And the second one is, certainly when we started to look at this format delivery, they really did treat the virtual audience as sort of second-hand. They're just over there, and they should actually just be able to watch it. And some clever people, have moved forwards and actually with creative minds to, as you say, to bring parity. So you're never going to get the same experience, but there are lots of little things you can do virtually that you can't do in person, and vice versa. And it's being clever with those, I think, which is where the future lies.
Yeah. Ben, can you just make us very envious about, again, your occupation and profession? There's some recent events you've worked on that would be wow. And also to help our audience imagine what a hybrid event can be.
Yeah. What we're seeing a lot of now with the restrictions loosening on COVID and all of that, is people are starting to gather back in person. And what we've been seeing as a trend for this year is smaller conferences, but with a direction to send it on to the online audience. So we're seeing lots of like conferences between 50 and 100 capacity in person, but the experience being led much better for those online. So this year we've done quite a few different events with HP, Intel, doing virtual product launches, sales kickoffs as well, and kind of going into how to make those more engaging, using green screens and virtual backdrops that can be completely branded to the client, and having different content in there just to keep it a bit more engaging, rather than a typical live stream of just on like a webinar platform and
like a TV show.
it more interesting. Yeah.
What about you, Gavin? Anything recently that?
Yeah, we did a fantastic one actually. It was all about net zero. So it was why virtual so important is that net zero is to be legislated for. So it's not a nice to have as a green agenda. You've actually now, it's going to be legislation. So you've got to reduce your carbon footprint. And so we ran an event all based on it was called the Net Zero Festival. And this is another misconception is that Ben and I often would chat about this, is that the other misconception is you have all of your presenters in a venue on stage. And what we did is that these people, I don't want to travel still. So we had 2 or 3 people in the studio with a very small live audience. And in fact, co-presenters. So we had the wonderful Krishna Guru Murphy from Channel 4 News in his hotel room in Washington as a presenter that was almost sort of sitting next to the famous Gavin Esler, journo extraordinaire, in the studio. So you don't even have to think about it being all the presenters in one place. And so we ran that. And why it was so successful was, as Ben was saying, you don't want it to be like a linear set of TV shows. So we ran a live stream 9 hours a day over 3 days. You got 27 hours of live delivery. But in parallel to that, you had little workshops. Okay, but they were all online, but you could attend them in person through your phone at workshops and then networking sessions, and there were round tables. So you actually had a really nice choice of things to watch, because people can't watch 9 hours of live streaming in a row. I mean, do you watch TV for 9 hours in a row?
Just Lord of the Rings.
Someday if I was hungover, but yes, it's not a normal thing to do. So that idea about having lots of different things going, it was a really successful event. Yeah.
Super. Listen, the title today is How to Run Successful Hybrid Events. So let's begin with what I'm going to call, in my world, the before stage. So I've got 2 questions in one, and feel free to jump in, any of you. How would you plan a hybrid event, or how would you help one of your customers plan the hybrid event? And what should your customers kind of get ready or think through, when working with you?
Yeah, it does come down to Ben and I have 2 very different roles actually when we approach it, and I think Ben would agree on this. Is that you've got to forget about the technology in your initial conversation. Just don't even touch on that. First of all, what's your event objectives? What do you want to achieve? What does your program look like? And then that's when we would sort of liaise on that. But Ben's obviously got all the heavy lifting to do, because it's all about the venue, Ben, isn't it? Which you've got to sit and sort out.
Yeah, and I think the first thing to do is to find what outcome you want. So like Gavin alluded to earlier, with the different types of hybrid events, whether that's a bookend or a simultaneous one, or you're actually going to run that in different stages with an echo event. Look at those different options first, and what experience you're wanting to give to the attendees, and then that would open up to the technology and looking at where you're streaming it to, what lower thirds you want there, and different tools that you can have on the stream. Have you got remote presenters, or are they going to be all in person? And then when it comes to those 2 different audiences, how are they going to speak to each other? Is there an interactive Q&A with remote presenters and in person, and remote attendees and in-person attendees?
I think I think also the thing that Ben and I have discussed previously as well is that do you deliver exactly the same program of content to the live audience as you do the virtual ones? Is that sometimes, quite often, there are benefits to not doing that actually, but that content will always be around on demand. So that's a question, and it is so new to so many people. Most people aren't geared up to even be able to respond to that. Or the other one is, as Ben was saying about the size of audiences. It's not even a question. How big is your venue going to be? I don't know how many people are going to come. And that's the point. Is the great thing about a hybrid, you can say, well, I can actually get a capacity venue for 200, knowing that in fact the attendance can be unlimited, because you've got that flexibility of the digital solution that sits alongside. But yeah, I mean, it just come down to brief. What's the brief and the outcomes in there. So it's a bit of a longer conversation than simply an in-person event or simply a virtual event, that's for sure.
And I'm guessing that, in your case, you'll be happy to have back and forth conversation as your clients are starting to obviously shape their thinking better thanks to your support and your experience, but also listening to this conversation, it feels to me that once again, we're making the same mistake we've done 10 years ago, 20 years ago with the tech, whether it's the early website or social media and so on. So people come to me and say, how can I learn? Can you teach me how to use Facebook better? And I say, well, can we put Facebook to one side and discuss your networking word of mouth marketing campaign? And forever, as people, human beings, we always talk about the tech first. And whilst you're both big fans of it, I'm sensing that you want to keep that as late as possible in the conversation, because without the briefing, you won't be in a position yourselves to be the designers of that experience.
Yeah, I think there's no benefit to discussing the tech. I mean, the tech is the delivery mechanism, but it's ultimately human beings that are controlling the dials and knobs about how that works. And that's the difference between delivering a very one-dimensional dull experience to something that feels multi-dimensional and is something that people creating a memorable event at the end of it. And I don't think that's really a lot different than if you're doing a purely in-person event or purely virtual. The desire to have a memorable experience is still top of people's agenda.
Reflecting conversation I've had with customers, when we talk about a hybrid event, the reaction I get is, oh my goodness, is double the problems, or is double the stress or complications. Just starting with you, Ben, what's your reaction when someone says, nah, I'll pass, I'll stick to the in-person event because it's I don't want to have double the kind of demand on my time, brain power, and potentially budget?
Yeah. I think the key thing there is connecting with the correct virtual provider, because a lot of what they will be able to help with is actually getting that to a place where you can open the virtual doors or the in-person doors. But if you're partnering with the right virtual event provider and the right production company to actually pull off both sides with the technology, that takes a lot of the pressure off whoever is given the task of pulling the conference together or pulling the meetings together. It's because you get that support system.
I think that that's interesting. What Ben's saying is that you are still having to run two events, and they are still two separate events, and it can be a headache. I mean, if you've got a big event with lots of sponsors, no sponsor is going to thank you for having to stand on their booth at Olympia and then also man the digital booth at the same time, which is why sometimes the echo option is way better for people, because they've actually then running two events but not on the same day. And it is if you do get, obviously bigging us up there, got to get the right virtual event provider and people on the ground provider too. But if you go out and get a separate virtual event company, or I use the AV company, if they've not worked together, that would definitely, that definitely lengthens the whole project process when people are getting to know each other.
One thing that I've really appreciated, even just as an observer, when I was speaking and hosting hybrid events, was what I call the before experience, where there's so much you can do to get the excitement going. There's so much people can do to start to network, to start to save, or even watch some pre-event content just to kind of understand more about the speakers and so on. And I think that's where to have a longer conversation with people like you is going to be so important, because you have all that literally in your head as well as documented. So let's move from the planning stage to the execution on the day. Can you share with us some suggestions and ideas you've taken from other events, where how do we make this a memorable experience for both the in-person and online audiences? I'll start with you, Ben.
Yeah, some of the things that we do and kind of try to advise with is the content, to keep that as engaging as possible. So when you have two audiences, you've got to keep both of them engaged. So that's engaging with questions with either the chat or however they're watching online, but also with the audience and including everybody in the conversation. And tips for looking at the camera. So when you're watching it from online, you actually feel like someone's looking at you, is really, really key for that. And then the Q&A section as well, like keeping that inclusive, of both audiences. But Gavin also has some great kind of tips that they can include with the platform side of things.
Yeah, I think that what people, and this will never change. In-person events, people are prepared to sit in their chair for a lot longer and listen to a person speaking than they are online. So you actually then have to tailor your content. And this is where you might say, well, let's not deliver everything live to the virtual audience. So I always use this as a really good example. If everybody has seen a TED talk, right? You're in digital marketing, Pascal, you must know TED Talks. And you know that they're really only ever 10 minutes long, and then you get the Q&A. But they're very well planned, 10 minutes. And then I even say an even better example is, I think it's genius, the little YouTube ads where it says you can skip the ad in 5 seconds, and in 5 seconds you get a lot of what they're trying to communicate. And I think that's going to be a new and emerging skill set that's going to be required by people, is how do I deliver what probably should go in an hour and 10 minutes? And it does come down to people are happy, as Ben said, the Q&A part. People don't care if that goes on for an hour, because they're engaged and they're chatting like we are. And a conversation is way better than listening to somebody on a stage. There's a very interesting statistic that came out quite a few years ago, and it's a bit overkill, this one. They said in an online presentation, you need to get the audience to do something every 90 seconds. So that's to pick up the old mouse and do something with it, whether that is a question. Even things like, how's the weather where you're coming from today? Because not everybody's sitting in Hammersmith in a conference centre where it's drizzling with rain. They could be in 40 different countries. And it definitely thinking about that to make it sort of memorable, etc.
Yeah, you can't just get up and walk out.
Yeah.
When you're in an in-person conference, you have to you're stuck to your seat until the end of that, and when you get the networking time, that's when you can leave. But not
if you're English, you don't. We're very polite. We just sit still and wait to the end.
Yeah.
Now, listening to both of you, I was reminded of the early days of me hosting virtual conferences. So we're talking summer 2020. And I remember saying to the organizers, do you want me to spend some time with the speakers and trainers? Because my background is video production. So I have, it's an interest in that, in terms of teaching to look into the lens, even though this thing's happening just below on the screen, but also the complete rethink and redesign of the content. Because I said the content and the slides and the handouts you have for a workshop in a room with 10 people, it's going to be not appropriate for the online. And sad to say, on a couple of occasions that offer was turned down, and sure enough, people rocked up, with their content as designed, let's say 2019, early 20, and it just wasn't suitable for the online environment. That you see the slide with lots of text and bullet points, and as opposed to creating almost a cinematic experience with everything that you can do. And now this conversation we had in the green room, Gavin and I was saying, and sadly still happening 2 years later.
Yeah, you can lead a horse to water, as they say. I think that there is, Pascal and I were just laughing, Ben, about the people that go on camera and still have the window of light behind them, so they just essentially are a silhouette. Some real basic stuff. I think that people keep going on about engagement content, and then go just say ad nauseum, but it is the most important thing. If you're not engaging somebody, I mean, ultimately, an event is message delivery. You're delivering a message. Yes, you got networking, but and still networking is about delivering a message, your own personal, but you're delivering a message. Well, if you start to see in a digital event, as Ben says, you don't walk out of an in-person event, but when you've got one of these nice things, a mouse, you can click away and you can actually physically see on your screen the audience going like this. And, it only takes 2 minutes before that happens. So I think again, content creators, there's a massive market. I know that they exist already, but I think it's a real skill actually to be able to do that.
Ben, can I press you a bit more on maybe some ideas or suggestions, things that even you found, oh, that's clever, or even put you under some gentle pressure when you were doing the live streaming and more? Is there anything you can share with us that could be a source of inspiration for our viewers and listeners?
What, in terms of engagement, or
something that would make it a remarkable event?
Remarkable.
Yeah, I think just for like engagement, really, even like the small details like we've just discussed there, trying to minimize distraction. So whether that's your backdrop and making it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, and having the window in front of you rather than behind you. So all those little things can add up to the experience of having a remarkable event. And it even comes down to, if you're sharing PowerPoint slides, what font size have you used for important data that needs to be shared? Because you got to think that if you're doing a company-wide event where most of your workforce are actually out in vans and they're engineers, but they still need to be kept up with all the information, they're probably in the van with their phone. So when you're sharing that content, they're going to be looking like this at the smaller detail. But I think something that's really remarkable for hybrid events is what iVent offer with Meeting Manager, and how that actually connects both audiences in a completely new way.
Yeah, I think Ben, it might just sound like a really simple thing what Ben's saying about making sure that you got a really slick delivery, because that does make a massive difference. But I don't think also people should be scared about doing different things for the different audiences. You don't have to have them doing the same stuff all the time. People do want to turn up and meet. And so, we've got this bit of kit called Meeting Manager, because during the pandemic, we sort of canvassed a lot of clients and said, what would you say are the biggest issues with virtual? And they said, that moment, the tap on the shoulder where you walk through a crowd of people and say, hey, Pascal, I haven't seen you for a while. You got 2 minutes. And so we created something whereby you can see everybody who's in the event, which is fairly normal in the virtual room platform. Tap on the shoulder. Have you got 2 minutes? Bang, you're straight into a discussion with them. And that's paid huge dividends already. I mean, everybody has that piece of kit in there now. And when you're thinking about remarkable, it isn't, we've done all sorts of things, circus acts and magicians and all sorts of things. You need a star of the show, first of all, because that's what makes it memorable. Listening to, networking with somebody is good. It's never remarkable. Contributing to a poll, interactive, never remarkable. And so it does come down to that old thing again of the quality of content is, you like a TED Talk again. I've come away from there and go, that was remarkable. It was amazing. And that's all it needs to be. There's no silver bullet or magic wand, really, that you can wave and go, these 3 things will make it remarkable. The fact that keeping the technology so it doesn't fall over, slick delivery, don't be concerned if your audiences are actually at points doing different things, but try and get them to engage with each other through a tool like Meeting Manager, whereby you can actually set up meetings in advance. If somebody sat in, in the, I don't know, I keep using Birmingham, in a conference centre in Birmingham, can sit and have a meeting through here with somebody who's in the virtual audience. That's great. You meet 5 good people a day, good enough. You listen to 2 great talks. That's remarkable enough for anybody, I think.
Thanks for the reminder. Do you know, I'm also remembering some of the early attempts 2020 where some of my customers made the mistake to think because it was online, there was no requirement to prepare and rehearse as much. Because when you do the physical event, people arrive the day before, there's a whole routine and ritual. You test the microphones, you go on stage, you walk up and down, you try the clicker, you do all those things because you've got a list of what could possibly go wrong. I call this the Dr. Pepper moment. And with the online stuff, I witnessed, Ben, the lack of preparation is actually what caused the problem on the day.
Yeah, no, testing is so important. And that's why we always build a half a day for testing for remote presenters, because what we find that sometimes is with high level clients, the firewall stops you from using the piece of kit. So they come to log in and actually present, but they can't log in because their work laptop is denied access to the tools that we ask them to use.
What Ben's described there is the classic one where we do pre-testing with a speaker and you speak and they go, yeah, it's all absolutely fine. Right. So you're going to be on that laptop, on that broadband connection. No, I'm going to do it from work on my work computer. And that's where, as Ben said, it's absolutely, that's 100% of them fall over. They go in, they log in, and they've got video throttling on their network or something, and it's game over. And that's what comes down to a remarkable event these days, is one that doesn't actually go wrong. I'm afraid it comes from a negative position to get to ground zero.
Yeah. Since we're having a bit of a reminiscing, the one thing that was bizarre to me as a kind of guest to someone else's event, when the speakers actually are quite tech savvy, but it's worked against us, where there was one guy who had so many webcams, he was always looking at the wrong one. So you have this situation where he was delivering, but he was always looking left, right, or whatever. But he was never looking at us, the audience. And eventually I just thought, this is so distracting, because normally people, when they talk to you, we try, to make eye contact the best we can through this video format. But typically people look at you when they talk. They don't look the opposite direction. So that was bizarre as well.
Sounds all a bit Joe Biden to me, that does.
Yeah, very, very true. All right, just before we move on to wrapping up this recording, so we've done the planning stage, and the message is use the expertise of the people across the desk or the virtual call and ask them lots of questions and do your prep. We've done this idea of a remarkable event is when actually you've taken time to prepare, to rehearse, to think about the audience, the experience, to adjust everything you're doing, and actually on occasion doing something a bit extra for the online audience and a bit extra for the offline. What about, I know you hinted it, Gavin, I'll start with you. What about the post-event experience? Are there things we could do better actually with a hybrid event than the typical things that you've done?
Yeah, I mean, you've got a lot of additional sort of inventory to pull on, as it were. I'm looking over here because I made a few notes earlier, but obviously the real big one is an on-demand period that you simply don't have live. So the Americans, bless them, say on-demand is just rewatching the video content. I don't agree with that. There is on-demand. Everything should be in there. But it's also an opportunity on some events where to have a wrap-up at the end of the 30-day period. And first of all, you're going to get all that lovely sort of long tail for sponsor exposure. You've got an extra 30 days. You could still have live chat. You could still run meetings within there as well. They don't all have to happen in one day. But we've had great success with two things. First of all, is a live show at the very end, maybe for 45 minutes, as a bit of a wrap-up for the event and talk about the next one that comes along. And the other thing is to actually record some backstage interviews from the live event when they come off that the live people don't see, and then to put that up as exclusive content. So you're actually giving people a compelling reason why they should come, why they should come back in. So there is a lot you can do. There's a lot of advice that we pop into people. It shouldn't just be come in, plug and play, click a button and off you go.
Sure. So we have the bonus edition. We've got the director's cut. We've got everything going. What about in your line of work? Ben, have you had, again, been asked or offered advice around the post-event experience?
Yeah. I think capturing that content that Gavin's saying with the interviews and things like that. But obviously, when you're running a hybrid event, everything is recorded for both audiences. So you've got all of that content that you wouldn't necessarily have if you just did it in person. So you really have now an opportunity to slice that up, use it as little vox pops or push it out as social media campaigns and create a real FOMO, the fear of missing out. So for the next event, you've created this real big buzz about what that event was to try and get more attendees on the next one by repurposing the content and the real good nuggets from those events and using them again.
Yeah, Ben and I have discussed this quite a lot in a couple of years we've known each other, but something that we sort of started with all those years ago was the 365 event. So it came to me in a bit of a dream one night, and I was like, okay, question, why does this conference only run once a year in person? Easy. It's expensive to run any more than that. People don't want to go to an event every month in there. So we've got this idea and we've delivered it fairly successfully, and we're really successful. And I think it's a massive growth. And that is, you run your in-person event live, maybe a little bit of a bookend in there. And then, as Ben says, you can repurpose some of that content into bite-sized chunks. But what you can do is you can then actually have a digital hub that stays online 365. And maybe once a month or even 6 to 8 weeks, you just bring it alive, deliver something completely new. But what that does, it keeps the entire event community engaged for the whole year. Because Pascal, you've been to lots of events, I'm sure. You roll up, you get ever so enthusiastic on the train home, going, I've got 76 business cards. I met them. We're going to make $1 trillion together. Within about 2 weeks, it just starts to fizzle out. And in fact, even though you have a social media community, maybe, or whatever it is, it's not the same as the jumping in. So we think that sort of, bring it to life once every 6 weeks, keeping the community engaged, because content shouldn't be just for one day a year. It should be all year, and actually get the audience to feed into what those sort of agenda items might look like.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. The one thing that I've seen people do well is also to get the audience behind it, where saying, I tell you what, why don't you organize your own meetup? We'll support it online. We'll do what we can. We'll reshare the resources and the handouts and the videos, but get together and talk through your actions, or talk through, how this event has had an impact. Because what I was saying to my customers, so you do the yearly summit, let's say it was yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
What are you going to talk about for the next 11 months? Because you can't just go on about, we had a lovely event 11 times, once a month, until you have a new one. You've got to find a way to extend that experience.
Yeah, I just don't think people think about it. They don't, it needs somebody to say, look, have you thought about that? There's no negative, in my opinion, to that. There's no negative in having that sort of model. And it's fairly cost effective. But you imagine the sponsor value that you could drive through having something like that. Look, do you want to exhibit for a whole year to an ever refreshing audience? There was somebody gave me a piece of advice many years ago about why do people go to virtual events? And that is that there's two successful formats. One is an ever refreshing audience, and the second one is a highly motivated audience. So an ever refreshing audience, we have a lot of success in the university higher education market. Of course, the students change every year. And the other one, highly motivated, things like careers fairs, which do run hybrid, certainly from universities, because human nature is such as, what's in it for me? Oh, a job. I'll turn up. So they're highly motivated, and that's why I think conference event producers need to get a lot more innovative with the online space, is to increase that motivation for people to want to turn up.
No, absolutely. Listen, it's been absolutely amazing, talking to both of you. I have so many more questions, but time is against us. But also, I want to make sure that we have enough time for you to take part in a fun quiz, the Content Marketing Studio quiz. So, simple questions, but actually that will help us learn more about you, Ben and Gavin. Let me start with you, Gavin. I've got first question. If you could have a video call with a celebrity, perhaps in the world of business or entertainment, who would it be?
I think honestly, probably Richard E. Grant. I just think he's one of the most, I love him as an actor. I think he's highly educated. He makes me laugh, very eloquent person. So I think, when you think about your dinner guests, he would definitely be one of the ones on there.
Excellent. Same question to you, Ben, then. So if you could have a video call with a celebrity, perhaps from the world of business or entertainment, who would you invite?
I think I'd like to sit down and have dinner with Bill Gates, and just to pick his brain on scalability and exploring new business opportunities, and really kind of lean into a lot of what they do with OKRs, objectives and key results. And it's a book from Measure What Matters. And it's a system that they actually implement with all of what they're doing with the foundation, and how they try and tackle massive things, but breaking it down. And I think that would be a really interesting dinner date.
Oh, absolutely.
Dinner date, yeah.
Yes, I can just imagine. So, Gavin, back to you. If you could organize your own virtual private concert for you and the family, who would be the artist or the band playing for you?
Oh, so easy. Iron Maiden. I've been a fan since 1982. Ben knows this. I go around the world with them. The last one was in Brooklyn. I'm off to see them in Paris in June, Lisbon in July. A lifelong passion of mine since I'm 55 now. So that was since 1982. Been a fan. Yeah, that's an easy one. Iron Maiden all day.
Excellent. Ben, what about you? The artist or band that would be playing for you virtual concert?
It's a tricky one because I got such a wide music taste. So probably you're going to hate this, Gavin, off the back of that. I'd probably like to see Coldplay.
Oh, it's okay.
Because I feel that they would do something really cool with the tech in that virtual concert with holograms or metaverse or something like that.
Nothing wrong with Coldplay.
No.
I mean, you don't get to sell that many albums if you're no good.
Quite. All right, Gavin. So you're listening to Iron Maiden, probably jumping and dancing in your living room. What food have you ordered?
Oh, I'm just a massive fan of Japanese food. Anything like that. Yeah, I just love the sort of clean, fresh flavors. The sushi came along, but then that's extended out. I think that's probably the favorite in our house, actually, with my whole family. Yeah, it's not all about rock and roll. Doesn't mean you have to suck on barbecue ribs and drink flagons of beer. You can be sophisticated and go Japanese.
No, that's what probably Ben's going to choose. But Liz, are you watching Coldplay? Even giving you little shout-outs to you and the family, but what are you ordering food-wise?
I would like to have a nice Thai takeaway. I think something Thai, very tasty and spicy.
Nice.
Super. Carry on. 2 more questions for you, Gavin. If you could have your own radio show, what would you talk about, and who would be your co-host?
Oh, crikey! What would I talk about on a radio show? That's a very difficult question. That needs a little bit of thought. I mean, what do I like to? I've got a few hobbies, actually. I mean, I play the guitar very badly. I've done since I was 16. I used to be a children's book illustrator. So, I said it's probably and I'm a Reiki master teacher as well. I mean, I've got lots of things that I love talking about, from sort of that sort of spiritual side to anything artistic. Music is my absolute life. So it'd probably be music based. I think quite like those shows where people, they've got like Desert Island Discs, where you get somebody in and they play a selection of their favorite music, and then you have the chit chat in between it. And I'll probably have Ben as my co-host, because I think we've made quite a good duet, actually. We do make each other, we're being quite sensible on this, we do make each other laugh quite a lot, actually, behind the scenes. We can have a bit of a
like Delboy and Rodney.
That's it. Yeah, definitely.
What about you, Ben? So your own radio show, what is the subject or the format, and who is your co-host? Which can be Gavin, just.
I think I would have a talk show just about life, and people can write in their questions, and I'd have a co-host, maybe Gavin and maybe someone else, maybe my wife, and we'd get special guests in and put different input into that as well. But we'd be taking different questions from our listeners and just talking about life situations.
Super. Well, traveling is something that we can all do a bit more and aspire to do more of. So is there anything on your wish list, Gavin, and a destination, a country you've not seen yet?
Anywhere I've not been that I'd like to go. I've quite liked sort of the Far East, Vietnam, Malaysia, around there. I've done India, and I've not done Australia, but it's not actually that high up on my list, to be honest. South America would be great, but I think probably, Vietnam, around there, all those sorts of places would be great. Food,
super,
amazing.
Ben, where would you like to go?
I'd like to do a tour of the US, probably West Coast, and that would be my one. I've done Australia, but I was only there for 3 days at a conference, and I flew straight back. So,
I was going to say that 2 and 3 days seems a bit.
I probably should have hung around there and delayed my flight a little bit, but I didn't make the most of that opportunity. But the West Coast of America was with me.
When you say a tour, are we talking motorbikes? Are we talking camper van? Or?
Yeah, I was going to say, is it like an SUV, or is it, what do they call? They call them
an RV.
RV.
Yeah, it would have to be. It would have to be a big RV
where the sides expand out to make your living room.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah, I think that would be best.
Excellent. Listen, both of you, thank you so much for spending time with me, but also to helping our viewers and listeners reflect what it means to go ahead with a successful hybrid event. People will be curious, no doubt, to know more about iVent and the wonderful work that you do with the team, Gavin, where they can go on the interweb to know more.
Yeah, so we are just www.ivent, which is IVENT, -hq.com, or just type iVent in, we appear. on
and
the first page.
in addition to the, forgive me, to the platform, there's also some great articles and more thoughts around hybrid, the benefits, the business case around sustainability.
Yeah, a lot of additional content and ebooks and articles on there to dive into. Yeah.
That's smashing. And Ben, where can people go to know more about Fresh Productions?
Yeah, so I mean, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. So my LinkedIn is Ben Hardin Fresh, and our website is freshproductions.co.uk. And yeah, we got lots of helpful content, blog content on there, answering various questions about hybrid, virtual, and yeah, just different topics on there.
Super. So once again, big thank you to Gavin and Ben. To your viewers and listeners, thank you for your support. I've mentioned it to you before during our many travels on the interweb that the future is hybrid. Hopefully this has been helpful in understanding what we mean by that. Until the next one, please go out there and make sure your content is better and faster. Bye for now.